The biggest single myth about the firearms industry is that when you purchase a firearm from a licensed dealer, the government gets informed. Well, that's not how it works. And this is a multifaceted myth, and I'm going to get into the specifics of it. I'm going to cover when an FBI background check is required, what information gets sent to the FBI for that background check, and then what happens when you take a firearm home from a dealer. What happens to your information? What happens to the paperwork? So stay tuned if those are things you want to know the truth about instead of just what your buddy tells you happened. So when you're going to buy a firearm from a licensed dealer, regardless of where you are, you're going to fill out a form called a 4473. That's an ATF form that takes down all of your information, the type of the firearm, and everything. No matter what, you're going to fill one of those out. It doesn't matter if you're in California, Texas, or New York, or anywhere in between. That form is federally required. At that point, once that form is turned in, the dealer is either going to conduct a background check or certify that a background check isn't required. Whoa, hold on a minute. What do you mean a background check's not required? Well, there are certain circumstances under which an individual has already undergone a background check that satisfies the requirements for the purposes of taking home a firearm. A couple of those examples are going to be an approved Form 4 for an SBR or a suppressor. You still have to fill out the 4473, but that approval from the ATF, that is your background check. Another one is in a state that allows it. A valid permit to carry or purchase, depends on the state, will allow you to forego an additional background check because one's conducted on you when you get that permit. I'm going to drop the ATF link below that outlines which states have a permit exemption to the additional FBI check. So if you're curious about your state, be sure to follow that link and see what your state says about allowing an alternate permit to be used. So now let's get into the specifics of the actual background check. As long as your state follows the federal system and doesn't have a state agency conducting the background check, this is how it works. First and foremost, you fill out that 4473. Once that's done, the dealer inputs your pertinent details only. So they're only entering in your demographic information. Your name, your date of birth, what state were you born in, what state do you live in, social security number if you put it on the form, gender, height, weight, literally just the stuff about you, not about the firearm. After that's all input, the only part that gets put in there about the type of gun that you're looking at purchasing is whether it's a handgun, a long gun, or other. Other would be like a frame or a receiver. And that's it, just a checkbox. Which one of those or multiples? Not if it's a AR or a shotgun. Not if it's a revolver or a Glock. There's no distinction on that background check as to the specific type of firearm you're looking at getting. Just a background check. Once the dealer submits all of that information, they get given a transaction number tied to your background. They have to put that down on their form. And then the dealer waits for the answer. And that answer can be, honestly, one of three things. And it can take a little while sometimes to come back. But the three possible outcomes of a background check are proceed. Hey, you get to take the gun home. Denied. Something sketchy's going on. You need to follow up with that, though, if you're sure you should be able to buy, because once denied, always denied. And then delayed. Delayed just means you can't take it home today. They got to research you a little more. For more information about delayed and denied statuses, be sure to check out my other videos. But let's keep going on this topic. So, once those results are in, the dealer records that on the 4473. If it's a proceed, as long as your state does not have any kind of waiting period, you get to go home with that firearm as soon as you pay that dealer for it. If your state has a waiting period, sorry, your state has a waiting period. Take it up with your state officials and get that changed. But you're still cleared, so you know your background check is good. If it's denied, you'd have to appeal that because, like I said earlier, once denied, always denied. And you have to fight every single one of those. So get on top of it quick and get on top of it early. And then delayed, it's a waiting game. And then, okay, let's say you're approved, because that's what we're talking about, right? Like information that actually gets to them because you bought a gun. Well, once you get approved and you take that gun home, they don't get any more information. They don't get told, hey, John Doe bought this Glock with this serial number on this date. They don't get told, hey, John Doe bought this Glock with this serial number and took it home on this date. All that they know is that a background check was conducted to see if you were eligible to purchase a gun. No information about the actual purchase gets transmitted anywhere. So, the only reason they'll ever see your information is if they go to that dealer's store and look for it. So, I've been doing this about 2 years now as a dealer, and the only time I've ever had the ATF ask me for copies of the 4473 or information off of the 4473 is in the event that a person got denied buying a gun. Can't blame them there. If somebody's buying a gun and getting denied on a background check, something's up. Now, they don't ask on every denied. So, I'm sure there's certain things in their system that make them look at it and others that don't. The only other time is in what's called a trace. So, let's say you do buy a gun. Let's say somebody breaks into your car and steals that gun before you even get a chance to go home. Well, you may call me up as a dealer so I can give you that serial number so you can report it stolen. Awesome. Okay, phase 1. It's only going to come back to that paperwork if that gun is recovered and law enforcement is trying to figure out who it belonged to. And at that point, if you've reported it stolen, no harm, no foul. Hopefully you get your gun back. The only other time that any information ends up in the hands of the government from buying from a licensed dealer is if that dealer goes out of business. So, here's what happens though, right? It's not just cut and dry, okay? So, if, let's say I went out of business tomorrow, I decided I'm done, I'm not going to sell any more guns. I have to send all of my files to the ATF's tracing center. Not an investigative unit, not anything else, to the tracing center. And basically, their little contract employees get to do the same thing that we do whenever a trace comes in, except they got to go find all my files and dig through them themselves instead of contacting a dealer. There, at present, is not any kind of federal registry. Some states do require registration of some guns. So, take that up with your state. If it's in your mindset that your gun's registered, if you've got a permit that's got a serial number on it, your state is requiring that registration because the feds don't. So, like I said, that is the biggest common myth, is that the government knows something got bought just because you passed a background check. They don't know that. You could pass a background check and change your mind. And I've had that happen. I've had someone come to buy a gun from me, and we start their background check, and it's researching, which just means that the computer's little hamsters are running their wheel. And before it comes back proceed, they buy a gun from somebody else. Well, 10-15 minutes later, the background check on my end comes back proceed, but they've changed their mind. So I have a 4473 that's got gun information, person's information, and a proceed, but we never transfer the gun. So it doesn't actually get transferred, and that 4473 goes in a different file, and there's some documentation stuff that we have to do. But just because a background check is ran, that does not mean they know you bought anything. And then if you have an alternative carry permit, like I talked about earlier, they don't have a clue unless they literally come look at my files. So quit spreading bad information. Quit talking about that 4473 gets sent somewhere. It doesn't. Doesn't happen. Some states are stupid, but that's a state issue. That's not an ATF or FBI issue. So thank you for watching. If you like the content, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.